glad you're here for the last pep talk before your STAAR test. Well, let's get started.
First off, I just want to say that you guys were amazing this last week preparing for the STAAR. And more than anything, I want you to know that you can do it. You can do amazing on this test. Just follow everything we've talked about, remember all the strategies we've used, and just do your best, and it'll show in the scores. So one of the first things I want you to remember to do when you get your test is to do a brain dump. And ask your teachers for scratch paper if you'd rather just do it on scratch paper versus actually in your test booklet so that you can look at it. And I did ask Ms. Fix about the scratch paper, and every teacher should be able to give you scratch paper. Okay, so let's go over a few things we talked about in the brain dump. One thing I really want you to remember was the volume. Go to your reference sheet and change the volume from V equals B, base, the area of the base times the height, and change it to the volume equals length times width times height. This will help you remember exactly what to do. So make sure you do that as soon as you get your test. Another big one we talked about for the brain dump was PEMDAS, or GEMDAS, as Miss Elliott likes to call it. Write it out. Okay, remember P is your parentheses, E is your exponent, so like 5 squared, M and D for multiplication and division go together, and then you have adding and subtracting, and those two go together. These two go left to right when we are solving. So there are 2 things right there already you should have written down as soon as you get your test. And real quick reminder, exponents, this means 5 times 5. It does not mean 5 times 2 because 5 times 5 is 25, where 5 times 2 is 10. So they are not the same thing. Another big one a lot of people were saying on Friday for brain dumping was KCF, keep, change, flip, for dividing fractions. So remember, give yourself an easy problem to remind yourself how to do it. So 2/5 divided by 4/6. Okay, so we're going to keep the 2/5. We're going to change division to multiplication. We're going to flip to 6/4, and then we can multiply 12/20. Okay, so also say 12/20 was an answer. That's okay. They can be simplified. 4 can go into both of these. So divide them by 4, this becomes 3. Divided by 4, this becomes 5. So sometimes you might have to simplify if your answer is not there. Remember with fractions that when you're adding and subtracting, you have to have common denominators. Multiplying and dividing, you do not. Another thing people were brain dumping on Fridays was the positives and negatives. So remember, you can also draw visuals if you get stuck with your positive and negatives. But we have to remember that adding and subtracting have their own set of rules that are separate from multiplying and dividing. So let's start with multiplying and dividing because those are a little less hectic. So if you have a positive and you are either multiplying or dividing by a positive, your answer will still be positive. That's what you've learned your whole life. And the same thing is true for a negative. A negative multiplied or divided by a negative gives you a positive. So same signs like to be positive. But if you have a positive times or divided by a negative, your answer is still negative. And it doesn't matter this order, they can flip-flop and it would still be negative. So remember, same signs, they like to be positive, they get along. Different signs don't get along, that's negative. But that is only for multiplying and dividing, not for adding and subtracting. So adding and subtracting have their own set of rules. So if you're adding, you have positive plus a positive gives you a positive, which we all know. And if you need to, write an example. 5 plus 2 is 7. And then if you have a negative plus a negative, your answer is negative. So remember we talked about adding and subtracting is like thinking about money. If you owe somebody $7, you owe somebody else $2, you owe a total of $9. And then if you have a big positive plus a little negative, you will end up with a positive. So let's say I have 12 plus -3. That's like I'm going to subtract, and I'll end up with a positive 9 because 12 minus 3. Or you could say you have a little positive plus a bigger negative, so 5 plus -11 equals a negative, and then you just do 11 minus 5, which gives you -6. And then the thing with subtracting, we do keep, change, change, so that we can just go back up to adding. So if I had -5 minus 2, I could change that to -5, keep, change to addition, change the +2 to a -2. And then I can follow the rules up above. So -5 plus -2 would have to be a -7. Another thing that people were putting on their brain dump list was X and Y. Remember, X comes before Y because it's first in the alphabet. Our X is independent variable, and our Y is our dependent variable. Remember, the dependent always likes to ask why. Why do I do this? Why? Why am I doing this? That is the dependent asking what to do. And remember, in a chart, you have X and Y, and then in a graph, you have your X and your Y. Okay, so you always graph your X first and then go to your Y. So remember, if this was actual coordinate, you would have positive, negative down here. Up here you have positive, positive numbers. Over here you have negative, positive. And down here you have negative, negative for your X and your Y's. Okay, let's not forget about ratios. Most ratios are written in part to whole. And sometimes we have to make these into bigger, like a bigger part and a bigger whole. And when we are doing ratios, we can only multiply and divide. So this way I would be multiplying. But on this side, if I needed to get to a smaller part and a smaller whole, if I have to go down, we're dividing. And sometimes we have to go down before we can actually go all the way to the larger numbers. For example, let's say I had 3 girls out of 5 students. Well, and I wanted to know if I had 20 students. This would be multiplying. Do not add. Oh my goodness, do not do it. So I would multiply this by 4. So this would give me 12 girls out of 20 students. Okay. I didn't really make a good one to go down. So sometimes you could also have, let's say, 18 boys to 20 girls. But they want to say, well, what if you only have 10 girls? How many boys would you have? This would be going down to the smaller side. We would have to divide. So divide by 2, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. So you'd have 9 boys. Another thing that people like to remember for brain dumping is that a triangle is 180 degrees. A right angle is 90 degrees. And that a straight line is also 180 degrees. So those are some pretty easy ones that most of us have memorized, but it's nice just to write it down in case you need to look back. A few more things for brain dumping that I just thought of. So mean is the average, which we've talked about is adding it all up. Remember, the mean teacher averages your grade. The median is your middle number. Your mode is the one that occurs the most. Okay, the most, mode most. And your range is your biggest number in the set minus the smallest number. And don't forget, when you're doing this middle up here, they've got to be in least to greatest order. Because some of you like to rush through and think they're in order. More than likely, they're not going to be in order. Okay, this will be, I think, the last brain dump. It's probably the most important brain dump, is the FDP. Fractions, decimals, percents. This was our big topic in 6th grade this year. How do I change a fraction to a decimal to a percent? the FDP. And you can go either direction. So if you have a percent, you can get to a fraction. If you have a decimal, you can get to a fraction. So remember what I said. Always use a number you already know the answer to. We already know that 3/4 is 75 hundredths or 75%. But it helps us remember what to do. So remember, your numerator goes on the inside, your denominator goes on the out, and just add the decimal. So 4 goes into 30, would have to go 7 times because you already know it's 75 hundredths. So just subtract, bring that 0 down. Then 4 goes into 25 5 times, and you are at 0. So look, we have our decimal, 75 hundredths. But now I need to change that to a percent. Well, we remember to change it to a percent, we move the decimal twice. Remember, we talked about how, oh look, there's 2 dots. That reminds us to move it twice. So it would be 75%. But let's say we started with a percent. Let's say we started with 4%. And we needed to go the other way. Well, you would do the exact opposite. Move your decimal twice this way, put a blank 0 in where the blank is. So now you have 4 hundredths. And right here, every percent is out of 100. So remember percent, it's percent out of 100. So if I have 4%, that is 4 out of 100, or you can simplify that to 2/50, which can also be simplified to 1/25. Now let's go over a few of the testing tips I gave you on Friday that we talked about on the remote controller. And the best way I can do this is actually showing you some problems and how I think through them when I'm working the test. So the number one tip for testing is always to read all the directions carefully. Read them twice. Underline, box, or highlight important information. And make sure after you've done that once, do it again just to double check. So here's an example of a problem where reading the directions plays a big role in getting the correct answer. Students in Miss G's class must complete at least 40 math problems for homework every week. 40. Man, you guys have it easy. The table shows the progress of 4 students on Wednesday. Which list shows the amounts of homework completed in order from greatest? See, notice I already said least to greatest because that's what we're used to. But it says greatest to least. So once again, I'm going to read the question. Which list shows the amount of homework completed in order from greatest to least? That gets us so many times on missing questions. So for this one, this is where the FDP plays an important role, fraction, decimal, percent. My suggestion is change them all to 1. Make sure they're all the same thing. Either they're all fractions, all decimals, all percents. Okay? So first thing I notice is that I have an 100%. So I might as well just change them all to percents. So let's change 0.4 to, or 4/10 to a percent, move it twice, add a 0, so this is 40%. Now I have 45/40, which is a fraction, so we're going to have to put our numerator inside and denominator on the out. It will go in there 1 time, 5 down, 0, bring another 0 down. 40 will go into 50 1 time, 40, 10, add a 0, bring it down. 40 will go into 100 twice, that's 80. You get 20, we're going to have to bring another 0 down. I'm kind of out of room, and that'll go in there. And then we can move that decimal twice. So this is 112 5/10%. And then same thing, 2/3. Remember, numerator, denominator. Numerator goes on the inside of the denominator. So 2/3, and some of you know what 2/3 already is. That's one of those that you should have memorized, honestly. So 3 cannot go into 2, but it can go into 20. 6 times, that's 18. Oh, notice we're getting a 2 again. So this is going to tell us it's going to keep repeating. So we are just going to add a 6 and draw a line. Move your decimal. So this one is 66 6/10 repeating percent. Now I can see, what is my greatest? My greatest is this one. So B has to be my answer because none of the others. And you could easily eliminate already that this one and this one, because 4/10 is the smallest. Okay, and then 2/3, that one doesn't make any sense either. Okay, so make sure you are reading carefully. My next tip is to do the work. Work out the math. Do not just do it in your head, because sometimes when we get in our head, we make things simpler or more complicated than they need to be. So once again, we're going to read the question. Frank has $65. He spent $2 per day for 7 days. Then he was given $9 to divide equally between himself and his brothers. The following expression can be used to find the amount of money Frank had after. Based on this expression, what is the amount of money Frank will have remaining? Okay, so sometimes our brain just goes left to right, and we don't even think about it. But anytime you have adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing all in one problem like this, you should automatically, bells should be ringing off in your head, I need to write PEMDAS. And that is exactly what you should be doing. So there's no parentheses, so we can mark that one off. And question, there is some that you should automatically eliminate as well, which I could actually put on this problem. This is a great problem for automatic elimination. Frank had $65. He had $65. They want to know how much is remaining. There are 2 answers that are just stupid. Those are people that are not reading the question. He cannot have 150 because he had 65. He cannot have 444 because he only has $65. So keep that in mind when you're working your problem. Look for those stupid answers. And I know, you shouldn't say stupid, but they are stupid. Okay, there's no exponents. Mark it out. Multiplication or division. So now we're going to rewrite this problem. 65 minus, I have a multiplication. 2 times 7 is 14. Plus 9 divided by 3. Okay, am I done with multiplication division? No, here is another division. Or another one, it's the only one. The other one is multiplication. So now I have 65 minus 14. Notice I am not touching any adding or subtracting yet because we are not there. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, now we're done with multiplication and division. Now we can do adding and subtracting. Remember, adding doesn't come first. It's left to right. So we're going to subtract first. 65 minus 14. Even if you can do this in your head, take the 2 seconds. Write it down. Double check your answer. So you have 51, and then you have 51 plus 3, which gives you the 54. So B would have been the correct answer. Okay, probably one of my favorite things to remind you to do is eliminate those stupid answers that I did in the last slide, but just one more time so you can see how we eliminate answers. But once again, I'm going to go back through them all. We're going to read the question carefully, make sure we underline, highlight, bold, whatever you need to do, the important stuff. Holly bought a magazine subscription for a year. She paid $27. For the entire year, she paid $27. Holly wanted to find the price P of the subscription each month. She created the model shown below. What was the price of subscription each month? So let's look for those stupid answers. The total she paid was $27. What does that tell you? That it can't be 39 and it can't be 324. You have just increased your odds of getting the question correct by a lot. We were at 25% to now you have a 50-50 shot of getting the answer correct by just eliminating those silly answers. So obviously, if they want to know each month, that is being divided. So we would have to do the $27 divided by 12. And also, you can think about this right now. Can 12 times 22 get $27? No, that doesn't even make sense. G is the only one that actually makes sense. But let's just go through the math just to be sure. 12 will go into 27 2 times. And here's another key thing to think about. Use your answers. So I know that there was a 2 here, there's a 2 here, so it had to be 2. Bring 3 down, 0. Look, the next numbers for both of those were both 2 as well. But you have to remember, bring that decimal up. So 12 will go into 30 2 times again, which is 24. Now you have a 6. Add another 0, bring it down. Look, they both have 5s now. So there we go. I used my answers to help me divide, especially if you're not a strong divider. Use these answers to help you divide correctly because they can give you clues to what you actually need to do. Remember, take your time. You are in no rush. You have 4 hours to take this test. 4 hours. In case you forgot, that's 240 minutes. And we're just going to round up and say you have 40 questions. So 240 minutes divided by 40 questions, that is 6 minutes per question. That is plenty of time. Take breaks. Take a breather, snack, drink water, stay hydrated. Okay, you have plenty of time to take this test. Remember, take it once, take a break. Don't give it to the teacher. Keep it. Then go back over your questions again.
Remember, another testing strategy is to circle your answers in the test booklet and then go back and bubble in. Keep track of time. The last 30 minutes need to be bubbled.
Don't forget to sleep at least 8 to 9 hours. Just like my dog Dexter, he is the king of sleeping. So make sure you do that tonight so you are well rested like he is every day when I come home from work. Eat a good breakfast tomorrow morning. Make sure you come well prepared so your brain can do amazing things on this math test. The most important thing I can tell you to do is to believe in yourself. You have worked hard this year. You have learned a lot of information, and you can do this, and I know you can. So every time you come to a problem that you may think, oh, I can't do this, remember you can. Use the strategies, eliminate answers, read the question carefully. Look at other questions to help you. Just take your time. You have plenty of time to take this test. And know that I'm cheering for you the entire day, even if I'm not in your room. Well, that's it. Good luck tomorrow, everyone. I hope this has helped you feel more confident and ready for tomorrow. I'm actually going to do one more video over a few more questions that some people have sent me. So there'll be a second video coming out, but it's not mandatory. Remember, none of these videos are mandatory. Come see me before your test tomorrow so I can give you a high five and wish you good luck. You are going to do amazing. Just know that. No matter what, I am proud of you already. Good luck.